Interest rate decision was made on the 23rd of July, 2026, this month. So the interest rate decision was made in such a way that the interest rate remained unchanged, and the decision was made by the South African Reserve Bank. And what does this mean for the small businesses? So I record this video on two bases. One, I need to clarify the fact that when we see the trends, the ANC says that the interest rate decision was influenced by the ANC to actually remain unchanged. So is that true? The answer is no. So the interest rate decision was not influenced by the ANC to remain unchanged. So we will see, if you can see, for instance, on the Facebook wall for the Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula. So he writes that in this week's ANC Today, he says that voice of the African National Congress. The African National Congress knows the decision to keep interest rate unchanged. So if you can read, there's an article that they put there. They make it sound as if it was the ANC that resulted to this interest rate decision to actually remain unchanged. I am not against the ANC. I am not a politician. So I'm just a business consultant who helps small businesses. We've got a long list of clients in our database. And every day, our staff members, they work tirelessly to actually help small businesses to remain compliant. So in this case, we want to cover the fact as to how the interest rate how does it affect the small businesses? So as it was unchanged on the 23rd of July 2026. So let's see, what is an interest rate decision? So who influenced it? So, and which interest rate are we talking about here? So in this case, we are talking about the repo rate, which remained at 7% on the 23rd of July 2026. So was an interest rate decision influenced by the ANC or MPC, which is the Monetary Policy Committee? Was it influenced by the African National Congress based on the South Africa's legal and institutional framework? This is the argument I make. The decision was made by the South African Reserve Bank. It was not made by the ANC. Why? The Monetary Policy Committee is the body that is legally responsible for setting the repo rate. It's not set by any other political party except the South African Reserve Bank, the MPC at the Reserve Bank, which is even the governor of the Reserve Bank is part of the MPC. So in this case, on the 23rd of July 2026, the MPC voted to keep the repo rate at 7%. For example, the vote was that 4 members were in favor of keeping the rate unchanged at 7%, while 2 members were proposing that the interest rate must increase by 25 basis points. Remember, the decision goes even if the economists' consensus says that the decision is that the interest rate is going to increase. Remember, the economist census comes before the decision is made, before these votes. So economists from different institutions like banks, trading institutions, and many other firms, financial firms, they estimate the rate at which the interest rate will increase or decrease, or they also estimate if it will remain unchanged. So some economists might say it's going to remain unchanged. Some might say it will increase. But if the majority of them are saying it will increase, then, for example, TradingView will publish those statistics. Investing.com will publish that information, and it will also even tell you the rate of the consensus. But that rate is not always correct. It's not always accurate, but many times it becomes accurate. So in this case, the vote was made by 4 MPC members. It seems as if there were 6 members, whereas it's supposed to be 7 members. So usually, if there were 6, it means that one of the members was absent when the decision was made at the Reserve Bank. So the decision was not made by the ANC. It was made by the MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank. So if more members, if the majority of the members are saying the interest rate must decrease, then it will decrease. If the majority of the members are saying it must increase, then it will increase. So if the majority of the members are saying it must remain unchanged, it will remain unchanged, like in this case. So the repo rate, for example, here, which is 7%, is the repurchase rate, is the interest rate at which the South African Reserve Bank lends money to the commercial banks. So if you don't understand that, think of it in this way. The South African Reserve Bank lends money to the banks, commercial banks, Standard Bank, Capitec. So when all these commercial banks, it can be Nedbank, it can be African Bank. So commercial banks borrow money from the Reserve Bank when they run out of funds, but they pay back that money at 7%, which is what is called the repo rate. But they are allowed to make their profit, that is to add 3.5%. It's not limited to 3.5%. Other banks can add 4.5%. But if you add more as a bank, it means you won't be competitive. So if, for example, if another bank adds the minimum, which is 3.5%, and another bank adds 4.5%, then it means that the bank that is adding 4.5% will lose some of its clients because their financial services will become expensive. So how does this relate to the small businesses? It relates in the sense that, for example, the other loans and the other grants are linked. For example, the loan that is given to the small businesses by SEDFA is linked to the repo rate. That means they charge the same rate that the bank charges, except the one that is granted by ECDC, the Eastern Cape Development Corporation. That one is cheaper. That grant is cheaper. And this one, the one that is offered by SEDFA, is linked to the prime lending rate, which is 10.5%. So if this repo rate was increased, it means that the small businesses that get to be funded by SEDFA will pay back the loan portion from their grant at 10.5%. But if it was increased to 8%, then it means they will pay it back at 11.5%. Because bank will add 3.5% to 8%, and that will make 11.5%. So because we consult, we work as consultants for small businesses, then we need to teach this to the small business owners. For the meeting that we had today, we were discussing this, and there were people who were thinking that this interest rate was remain unchanged because it was influenced by the ANC. They see what is written on the media and so on. They don't know the actual activities of the Reserve Bank. So the repo rate influences the interest rates. That means if bank have to charge their interest rates, they link it to the repo rate. So the higher the repo rate, the higher the prime lending rate by the commercial banks to its clients. Those can be the small businesses, those could be the big businesses, it can be the individuals. So their clients are constituted by different types of clients. So businesses, individuals, and big businesses. So in this case, we need to understand that the repo rate is currently sitting at 7% and the current prime lending rate is 10.5% because the repo rate was not changed from 7%. The decision dictated that the repo rate remains at 7%. So that's what I am arguing against, that it was not the decision of the ANC to keep the repo rate at 7%. So the latest MPC decision is that the rate remained unchanged. It was made on the 23rd of July, as I said, 2026. The previous change was on the 28th of May, 2026, where the repo rate was increased by 25 basis points from 6.75% to 7%. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it helped, it made you to understand, especially as a small business owner. Thank you so much.